and then Facebook takes its sweet time. So,
Okay.
and it looks like we got a couple of people hanging out with us here. So YouTube is rolling. I wish YouTube would like allow me to press go. They
Yeah.
just like start streaming. It's just like, we don't care if you're ready, just go.
Yeah.
Facebook, you at least have to like click go.
Yeah.
So we will roll here in about 5 seconds. Thank you, those that are jumping on Riverside. All right. Hey, what's up, everyone? We are live everywhere we're supposed to be live. So wherever you're watching us from, hello. Good day. I'm excited to be here. My name is Trevor. I'm the CEO of Coach Catalyst, and I have a special guest today, and I'll let her do a little introduction here. And today we're going to talk about this new thing that's coming out. I don't want to call it through CrossFit, but it's Greg Glassman, who was the founder of CrossFit, is now coming out with a new thing. But I want to talk about Jen first because we wanted to bring in a resident expert and one of my favorite people. So, Jen, tell us a little bit about yourself for people that don't know who you are.
Yeah, well, hi guys. I'm Jen Brocksterman. I'm a registered dietitian and I am the founder of Prosper Nutrition Coaching, which is a world-class nutrition certification for any coach looking to uplevel their skills. And then my connection to the CrossFit space is I was a dietitian for more than 14 years inside of a CrossFit box that my husband and I own together. So I end up, pretty high level CrossFit athlete, never got to the games, but was at that sort of regionals, semifinal level for a number of years. So lived and breathed CrossFit for a long time, but I'm now still in the nutrition coaching space. And we have lots to talk about on this
Yes.
particular topic.
Yes, we do. And shameless plug for Jen with Prosper Nutrition. My staff just finished her certification, so it was awesome, and now we're excited to start putting it into implementation and
Awesome.
starting to generate some revenue from it. So we're super excited about that. So thank you for developing that. But today is all about this idea called MetFix. I put
Mm-hmm.
an article for those of you that read my emails. I put an article to the actual like announcement of it, but it's still kind of been a little bit like wishy-washy on like what
Yes.
it is. It's like invite only, you need to apply and all these kind of things. Jen, I know you did an interview with Barbell Strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the New York Times as well. So you may have a little bit more insight. So tell us a little like what you know from your end and like what this MetFix thing is.
So a lot of the comments come from Greg Glassman's co-founder, which is Emily Kaplan. So again, I'm just going off of her words.
Right.
I haven't gone through their program. I haven't been to their cert. And essentially, I mean, there's very good intent behind it. They're really speaking to the fact that there is quite a lot of metabolically unfit people in our society today. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Our processed food environment, our built environment around us, just, the modern conveniences. And so what they're doing is they're trying to tackle, and essentially they're like, this was the missing piece that CrossFit really never fully developed. So CrossFit was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be fitness and nutrition. And the sounds of what MetFix is kind of hinting at is they're a nutrition focused fitness initiative. But from the sounds of some of the interviews that Emily Kaplan has done, they're really leaning hard into a very low or ultra low carb diet. And that's kind of a blanket statement that they believe pretty much everyone should be eating extremely low carb. And then again, maybe misinterpreted, but the quotes I directly read from that article you linked to is that one of their areas they're trying to address is this lack of information. So they're very much like coaches need to understand at the cellular level how glucose affects the cell. And as coaches and as clients have more information on like the metabolic process, it's the information that's going to change behavior. And we can dive into whether we agree with that or disagree or we feel neutral about it, but those are kind of the main tenets that I'm aware of. And then, like you said, they have sort of this affiliate marketing scheme where it's invite only, have to apply. Once you're selected and in, then you're allowed to invite, I think, up to 2 coaches to take the next round of the certification. Not that I'm going to call it a scheme, but you kind of get the sense of it's going to grow through invitation.
Yeah, I mean, and we can talk about that model too, which is kind of interesting. But like, I mean, just going back to like CrossFit and quote unquote nutrition,
Yeah.
right? And so I think Rob Wolf from early on, and maybe some other people that I don't know, but the whole paleo thing, right? Like paleo
Yep.
really kind of came out of CrossFit,
For sure.
right? As like, I mean, they were kind of hand in hand, and CrossFit really elevated paleo from an eating strategy
Mhm.
standpoint, right?
Well, it
So
was
I'll be
zone first, then paleo.
was it zone first?
Oh yeah, like we're OG box owners. So 2006, that's when Dave affiliated. It was zone.
Okay.
And then Rob Wolf kind of came into the scene and it evolved into more the paleo and CrossFit got associated together.
Right. Yeah, and so I'll be curious, and with this approach, with it being kind of lower carb. I mean, for you, like, let's since we don't know the actual like details of it, right? Let's just say it's a very low carb approach. So for you as a dietitian, like, what is that like? What starts rolling around in your head when you see, hey, large organization going to roll out this type of dietary approach across a lot of people and has a lot of influence? Like, what's going on in your head?
The first thing is for me as a dietitian and a nutrition coach is it's all about individualization and being client specific with the advice I give. So, do I have nutrition clients that are eating very low carb and that is appropriate and the right choice for them? Heck yeah, I do.
Hmm.
But when I start to look at, across the spectrum of different individuals with diseased versus non-diseased body states, high levels of athletics versus not, low carb isn't the right solution to all of them. So where my dietitian brain goes is I actually teach carbs in a more educational, nuanced way, and I teach carbs on 3 levels. Do you want me to jump in? And for those
Yeah,
that
let's
are
talk
listening,
about it.
kind of
Yeah,
like drop
this is good.
the levels with you. So I basically teach carbs as a level 1, a level 2, or a level 3 choice. Just like if you were at the gas pump, you would have a low grade gas, a mid grade gas, or a high grade gas button you could select from to put into that vehicle. Now, of course, I agree with any nutrition coach that is prioritizing more whole food. Whether you're an athlete or you have metabolic disease, anyone kind of increasing their whole food consumption is going to look and feel better. And so the way I label the carbs is the level 3 is that whole food category. I call them nature's carbs. So this is apples and sweet potato and steel cut oats and blueberries and squash and brown rice. And basically, if you planted a seed in the ground and you gave it some time, you could harvest something we as humans could go and eat. And I'll come back to level 3s in a second because I've got good news and I've got bad news about the level 3s. The level 2 carbs that sit there in the middle are healthy, but they have a human component to processing them. So a great example would be like a really low sugar, high fiber bran flake cereal, or it might be whole wheat bread, or it might be, a like a parboiled kind of scrubbed brown rice that has increased its cooking time because they processed it slightly to make it cook faster. So humans got involved and we meddled a little bit with the way nature produced that food for us. And then obviously what's categories left is the level 1 carbs. These are what I call the ultra processed carbohydrate category. And it's what most people associate when they say like, oh, carbs are bad for your health, carbs are addictive, carbs create inflammation and obesity and all these disease states. Well, no, not all carbs are equal. And so I want to go back to the level 3 for a second. And I always kind of have this joke that I have good news and really bad news. So I'll let you pick for the audience. Do you want the good news or do you want the bad news first?
Let's start with the bad news first. Let's get it out of the way.
Okay, pessimism first. That's what everyone
That's
says.
right.
So the bad news is these carbs are bland and boring and they're time consuming. So if you're in a rush, it's not easy to get a bowl of steel cut oats whipped up for breakfast with maybe some eggs and berries on top or whatever. If I want to make a sweet potato taco for dinner, which is like kind of like a Mexican night, I'll roast sweet potatoes, I'll cut a slit down the center, let them get warm and split open, and then I'll fill it with like ground turkey or chicken or beef and avocado and tomatoes and lettuce. And it's a really yummy, kind of like messy sweet potato taco. But I'm 40 minutes in before that particular
Right.
dinner is ready. Or if I go grab the processed corn taco shells from the grocery store, I'm ready in like 30 seconds. So the downside of those carbs is a lot of people either lack the cooking skills or they have a perceived or a real lack of time or they might have physical limitations, right? We've got people that can't stand on their feet for hours or whatever the case might be. So schedules, demands, stress, time, those carbs are just more challenging because you have to have the skill of cooking. But here's the good news of the level 3 carbs. They're what I call anti binge carbohydrates. Have you ever stress ate bowls and bowls of steel cut oats and you're 5 bowls deep and you're like, how did that just get away from me? Never. Have you
Right.
ever bought a
Right.
squash at Thanksgiving and been like, I don't know if I can trust myself. I don't know if that squash is going to wait till we get to Thanksgiving dinner because you just gobble it up a night or two
Right.
early, right? So like they have so much fiber and fullness and satiety that you instantly, your brain loses interest and those carbs are non-addictive. But if I gave you a bag of potato chips or peanut M&Ms or freshly baked gooey chocolate chip cookies, now we have to start to struggle with willpower and portion control. And I think a lot of people have that experience with carbs that they don't trust themselves, but really what they're referring to is the ultra processed
Right.
level 1 carbs are hard from a portion and appetite management perspective.
Food scientists are like just stupid smart people.
Oh, do you want to go crazy deep down a bit of a rabbit hole there?
Let's
So I actually gave a keynote at a conference on the subtle and addictive nature of processed foods. They know exactly what they're doing. So, one of the things they have is it's called stimuli stacking. And so, sugar, salt, and fat are obviously the three most strongest kind of flavors that suck us in. But when
Mhm.
you stack them and layer them, you create even more addiction. So, think of this. Do you ever just go to your white sugar in your cupboard and just eat white sugar by the spoonful? No, but if I layer white sugar into a fat filled, gooey chocolate brownie, or if I have pizza that has salt and fat on it, anytime you start to overlap and layer, the second thing that they do in the food industry is they're looking for what they call the addiction point. They do blind taste tests and they actually select the formulation, not the one that gets ranked the highest on a taste test objective score. They usually select the formulation that causes the largest amount of food to be consumed. And that is something that they factor in. And even this is like, I'll give you a crazy example. And this person, I think, worked for Chili's behind the scenes in one of the processing factories, wouldn't give their name. So, have you ever had like, you think you're ordering healthy eating out, you get like a grilled chicken salad and trying to
Mhm.
get lots of veggies and protein. And have you ever been like, why is their chicken so much better than like when I try and grill a chicken breast at home? Well, they behind the scenes go and stab it full of needles to pre soften the meat so it has more of a softer mouthfeel. And they inject it with a sodium sugar solution. So they're stimuli stacking even into protein. So there's lots and lots of stuff happening like that behind the scenes, but there is a lot of intention to making food hyper addictive and palatable. And the carb
Which
category knows what it's doing.
right, exactly. And which leads us really to like we don't live in a world where being healthy is easy, right? We're
Right.
we're not nudged to being healthy, right? We're nudged to
Absolutely.
move less and eat processed foods and like all these convenience type things, which ultimately takes its toll on our health and is why we need coaches and all these people. And so like I'm excited about this launch, right? Because I think it's mainly because of the probably the publicity around it. Like, I mean, you got an interview with New York Times, right? Like,
Yep.
New York Times isn't calling to talk about some random person that's out in Ohio that's kind of talking about the next new thing, which none of this is going to be revolutionary, I think, for anyone, right? That's been in the industry. Like, okay, cool. We've kind of heard this song and dance before, but it's coming from someone that's fairly well respected. And really, I mean, most everyone knows kind of what CrossFit is.
Mhm.
But the thing that really caught my attention was this idea of like education is the issue, right? And if we just
Mhm.
know more, then people will just make better decisions. And I'd like you to speak to that a little bit. And I kind of have some opinions on that as well. But like, is education the solution to this idea of unhealthy eating?
I'm going to be direct. I think no, it's education's not the problem. And I'm going to back it up with specifically what I did my master's in foods and nutrition. So, when I was a new dietitian, I got recruited to go do a master's degree in foods and nutritional sciences. And specifically, we were studying an education based approach in people who had prediabetes and were on a high trajectory to developing type 2. And what my master's was testing against the didactic theory of like, come to some presentations, we'll give you education, these foods are better, these foods are not as good, eat this, more of less of that, is we tested a habit-based, skill-building, gamified approach to behavior change. So what we did is we took that a second group of people who had prediabetes and we're like, let's make this fun, let's build a community of support, and let's add some games and playfulness to helping behavior change become more fun and more easy. So we did things like cooking classes where our participants came together and we focused on more whole food recipes, rich in protein, rich in veggies that got more of the whole food level 3 categories up. And we got a lot of the ultra processed foods down. We met in the woods and we did weekly hikes and walking groups, and we divided into different skill level and sedentary versus, our fitter participants. We did things around like abundance. So that rainbow game that actually is inside my
Mhm.
certification, I made that as part of our master's research, which is like, how do we just get you eating more colors, more kinds? We'll give you some recipe and some snack suggestions to build okra into your diet. Or how do we get pomegranates, maybe with yogurt as a morning snack? And so what we tested were the two models: the education led old model of, we just need to tell you right from wrong, listen to the list and listen to the experts. And then we did another, like I said, this more community, habit based, gamified skill building model, where we had little bits of information peppered throughout, but mostly we taught them the real world skills and created a built environment. Like you said, the environment works against you to be healthy. So when we manufactured the environment that made walking and hiking normalized and cooking together and just having accountability and check-ins and social support, guess which group had their A1C go down? Guess which group had their prediabetes reverse back into normal blood glucose control? It was astounding how much better our gamified, community oriented group outperformed the educational model that we were testing.
That's
So,
awesome.
I mean, we've seen it firsthand. We know that, and that's kind of the beauty of what CrossFit was, right? Was they
Right.
made fitness gamified, scalable, fun in an environment where the healthy choice was the easy choice to do.
Right. Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, if a few things that you said there, right? Intuitively, I feel like that's kind of what we know. If we were to go up to a random person on the street and we just ask them about like, hey, what does healthy eating mean to you? They're probably going to say like, probably should drink more water and lots of fruits and vegetables. I should probably drink less soda. I should probably eat less, donuts and cookies and those kind of things. Like, so it's not like we don't know necessarily what to do. Right. And like you said, it's the actual doing, which is the
Mhm.
hard part, and why
Yep.
coaches can play such a valuable role because they can be a piece to help people with the doing. Right. And so it's really interesting to see that, like, all right, cool. We actually have data that backs up maybe some of this intuition.
Yeah. And you know what I always say whenever I meet with someone? The first thing out of my mouth is, you know what? I know that you already have that information up in your head. My job as a nutrition coach is to help take those good intentions and just translate them into your everyday healthy habits, your
Right.
everyday behavior. And the goal is like, they're not stupid. People don't hire coaches because they don't know what they need to do. A coach is just someone to pull you on the path that you want to go down and to just provide support and get you to where you want to go faster. And I
Right.
think that's like helping them take away, like, not that I think my clients have a lot of shame that they've reached out and asked for help, but it's to remind them that, like, I'm not going to talk to you like you're an idiot, or that you don't know that broccoli could be a healthy addition to your dinner, or that we want to get you off soda and drinking more water. And so I just say, like, yeah, my job as a coach is to take the good intentions in your head and help you be more consistent day
Right.
to day. And people are like, yeah, okay, I'm down for that.
So whenever we want to go mainstream with something, right? Call it a franchise, call it whatever, right?
Mhm.
Most people will probably say, and hopefully this doesn't hit anybody wrong, but like CrossFit, right, took kind of fitness and put it in this little box and said, here's what it is. Here are the movements. Here's what we're going to benchmark. Here's how we're going to do it. It's going to be high intensity. It's going to be gymnastics. It's going to be Olympic lift. Like, here's the stuff. And so coaches that have been in the game for a long time are like, maybe that's not the best for everyone, right? But they were able to go mainstream because of this like simplification process around it.
Mhm.
And so when we look at it from a nutrition standpoint, right, we've seen something like pharmaceuticals go mainstream because it's simple, right?
Mhm.
I take the pill or I take the shot or whatever, and I'm able to do it. So how do you take something like nutrition and still keep it individualized to an extent, but allow it so it can actually go mainstream? Or is it really like a one person at a time type of scenario?
Ooh,
You know what I mean?
that is a really good question. And I don't think I have a full answer to that. In all honesty, like the way I coach as a dietitian, the what I'm trying to do with my certification is what I hope goes mainstream is normalizing that hiring support, hiring
Yeah.
accountability, working with a coach is a really good idea. But then I think what I'm trying to do in the coaching industry is give coaches those skills so that they can keep it simple but individualized. And so, back to kind of even the carb example, should everyone be low carb? Well, I always use the metaphor of how far do you drive your car? if my car stays parked in my driveway 6 out of 7 days of the week, and I'm a little old lady that goes and gets
Right.
groceries and goes to church, I don't need a lot of gasoline. But if I drive long distance to a job every day and I have a 45-minute commute each way, I'm going to go through a lot more gas. So when I work with often my female athletes who take in some of this information about low carb, low, intermittent fasting, low calories, and then I'm watching their performance take in their gym, and they're constantly injured, and they're having issues with their hormones and menstrual cycle, and they're moody and irritable. Sometimes it actually takes a little bit of like individualized knowledge-based re-education to go, yes, you maybe have been indoctrinated with low carb messaging for you and your level of physical output. That doesn't make sense for your body. So I would hope in our coaching industry, we still have good coaches who don't, I call it dogmatic coaching, where they just like are so blinders on
Right.
that they're like, this one thing is the elixir. It totally changes based on how old you are, your activity level, and where you are in life and where you're starting from. So I hope that part of coaching gets normalized, is the
Right.
individualized piece that's simplified. But I hope we normalize more coaches out there in this fight.
Right. And it's kind of like community by community, I think, in a
Mhm.
way where, this appears to be kind of going after, individual coaches, potentially gyms, potentially CrossFit boxes, that kind of thing, where they're very community based. Right. And so can you have one or two coaches in every community that are educating in a way and coaching in a way? Like, I think that's where, it's kind of like CrossFit, right? Like CrossFit started as like little communities,
Yep.
and then eventually it grew into a bigger and bigger and bigger thing, and then there was mainstream, and then it was televised, and then it was like all of these other things, but it started as this like kind of grassroots type of operation.
Now, can I flip a question to you? I'm
Yeah,
really curious
absolutely.
to hear your perspective. So I sort of gave my perspective on like, is information enough or is information the missing piece? With Coach Catalyst, what's so interesting is you could have just an information only delivery, right? Of nutrition information, things that are going to guide a client along the right path. I don't see your platform as just an information only platform. It's the coaches and how they use the tool of the platform. So
Correct.
I'm curious because you guys obviously collect data across tons
Yeah.
of organizations and coaches. And which coaches are the most successful versus the ones, or maybe the ones that are information only and are very hands off on the coaching individualized? Because I get coaches who ask me that, like, how do I be totally hands off? And I was like, I don't know if you're in the right profession to be a coach if you want to be just information dripping. So I'm curious from the data,
Yeah,
what you guys see.
like 100%. So the whole reason Coach Catalyst was created because we wanted better data as coaches.
Hmm.
We wanted to know how our clients were doing, because Coach Catalyst was born out of the gym, right?
Hmm.
So we were seeing people in person for workouts, but we couldn't really have much. We could tell them what to do outside, but we really didn't know how well they were doing. And you had to ask and ask questions. And we all know memory recall isn't the most valid source of information. And so we needed a better way. And so that was like the origin of Coach Catalyst. And we, at the time, were actually running a lot of challenges. And this was kind of an informal study that we did, but we took a challenge. It was a 6-week challenge, and we took the exact same curriculum. So it was daily lessons, it was daily check-ins, and one curriculum was just done. Here it is through the app, technology delivered, dripped every day. Cool. Another one had a coach that was following through,
Mm.
that was checking in on people if they didn't check in, and was the human component of it. And I think our completion rate was under 10% for the information only, which
Whoa.
is pretty, like, if we look at like, so info products is actually a really good place to study this kind of stuff. Like, how many
Hmm.
people download something but don't actually open it, or how many people buy a course and don't complete it? And it's
Isn't it like
typically
only
single
four or five
digits.
percent?
It's really small.
Like, yeah,
Yeah,
like four or
it's
5% of people finish an info
yeah.
only product.
It's really small. And so we had that group that was, the under 10% group, which just kind of falls in line with that. And then the group that had a coach, 90% completion. So they completed
Wow.
it, like 9 out of 10 completed, went all the way through the 6 weeks. And so, like, the difference wasn't the curriculum, it wasn't the information that was delivered, it was the human component, which kind of reinforced kind of what we're trying to do with technology. Is really, we see technology as a way to augment the coach, to give them better information so that they can make better decisions as a coach. And so when we look at the platform, the coaches that are the most successful are the ones that are the most engaged. Like,
Mm.
that's, I mean,
Not shocking.
right. It's like this isn't like revolutionary, right? And so, but the goal is that you can utilize technology. If you're not using technology and you're using like all these random things, maybe you have, documents, PDFs that you're sending via email, and you are communicating in like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and all of these places, like your scale is really small. You can do that with 3 or 4 people, but you can't do it with 10, 20, 50, 100, 150 without having to hire a lot more. And
Mhm.
so like technology, if done right, should take you to 20 to 50 to 100 people and still allow you to provide what we call like the one-on-one experience. Like
Mhm.
you like that client is your only client,
Yeah.
right? And so that's how we think about technology. And like the coaches that I see that have the most like engaged communities are the ones that are like posting in their community, they're tagging clients, they are like asking open-ended questions, they're driving engagement. And then a lot of other coaches is like, hey, my community just doesn't quite hit. And like we go and look at it, and it's just like, well, you weren't really doing anything to make it happen, right? Tech isn't the solution.
You know what you're jogging my memory of too is the social media posts for me that go the flattest, which is an information based post. Here is a smoothie recipe.
Hmm.
Here are the benefits of broccoli. This is why you should, eat more protein or whatever. People are like, next, they just
Right.
scroll right past it. But like you said, the ones that are engaging, that are real moments of coaching that's individualized, those are the posts that actually even do better on a social media side of things.
Which if we look at like CrossFit's trajectory, right? And like why was if I had to boil down why I think CrossFit was as successful as it was because of the community. It
Yeah.
is because what they built from a social standpoint
Hmm.
and really brought a strong community focus to fitness. Where before that, fitness was like a gym that you would go to, that maybe you talk to somebody, but you probably just have earbuds in the whole time and you're kind of just like doing your thing and you really don't know what to do. So you're just kind of like bouncing around from stuff. Where CrossFit was kind of the first like mainstream that was more geared towards strength training. Right.
Right.
We've had like aerobics, we've had this kind of evolution of fitness, this group fitness, and that's kind of evolved. But CrossFit was like the first one that was really around this idea of like strength training and really intensity around training. And so it'd be interesting if they're teaching coaches to how to build the community aspect. Because if we're
Mhm.
starting to add in some of these other components, now I think we're really starting to get somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like you want to take the best parts of CrossFit. Like, what was it? Like you said, it was the community. I think it was the fun. I never found a CrossFit workout boring. There was always like a gamified for time or how many rounds, or, a partner workout made it a little bit more
Hmm.
interesting. And then it was infinitely scalable. You could make it as hard as you wanted to make it. And you could also adapt it down to a brand new beginner who's maybe just working with the mechanics of their body weight. Or you could be a little more elite and then maybe get injured, still come to class, scale it back, work through your injury, and get right back to where you were. And so I think that was the magic of CrossFit is it was so fun, so individualized, but there was this magical undertone or current of community. And so I haven't heard all those beautiful features
Right.
mentioned with Metfix yet. And maybe it's coming. We don't know. Like you said, it's still pretty vague, but it just seems like information. And I don't want to get too judgmental, but my spidey senses, my hair on my back kind of went up when it was like, well, the coaches just they need to go through this PhD in nutrition in a weekend. I kind of heard that quote somewhere from Emily or one of the articles that was posted. And to me, that's egocentric coaching. I don't need to sound as smart as possible in front of the clients I work with. In fact, that is doing my clients a huge disservice because I'm coaching for me and my ego. I don't try to sound smart and impressive. Think of the coaches on the floor that are describing the muscles really, really to the highest level. Or they're like, hey, with your shoulder, I want you to think about this, right? Like a good coach makes it about the client's experience, not about them. And I mean, we had a coach we had to get rid of from our gym who was the most egotistical coach in the world. He just made everyone feel horrible in his presence because it was all about him. And I hope that's not going to be a part of Metfix
Right.
because it sounded like in that educational training weekend, it just had this very like kind of elitist undertone. I might be totally wrong because I don't know
Do,
what they're going to talk about.
do you think there's a fine line with coaching too, where you want to be seen as an expert,
Hmm.
right? Because like someone just having doctor before their name or PhD after their name, right? Like whether they know what they're talking about or not, gives a
Right.
level of trust and respect from the
Hmm.
client. which if a client believes that someone can help them, the likelihood of them being successful is higher, right? Than if you're like, I don't really trust what this person is saying. And so is there like a fine line in like being the expert, but not like forcing the expert upon that person?
There is, but I think a lot of newer coaches accidentally overemphasize this. I mean, I could have walls of certifications behind me. I don't have a single certification hanging in my office. I have 3 degrees to my name, right? And more conferences than I can count. And that is not why my clients hire me. They're hiring me as a coach because, in the form of marketing that any coach does, that person has to get over the bridge of trust that they believe you, as the coach, can help someone like them. And a lot of the times it comes down to how you make that person feel. Are you actually listening to them and meeting them where they're at? And let's be honest, it's social proof. They
Yep.
need to see that other people like them got supported by someone like you. That has nothing to do with how fancy your credentials are. It comes down to good coaching, right? So I think a lot of new coaches, don't sell yourself short if you don't have every degree or credential to your name. It's about being a good coach and showing that you can help others like the people you want to serve.
Yeah. I think the social proof piece weighs more than any probably education
Hmm.
certification that you could potentially have, right? Because as humans, we trust quote unquote crowds,
Yep.
right? If the restaurant has a long line outside of it, whether it's good or not, we're gonna immediately when we go by, like, oh, hey, they must be good because they're popular,
Hmm.
right? We assume that this kind of law of large numbers, right, allows us to make decisions quicker because we think that, oh, all these people like it. Well, I'll probably like it too. And so from an early on as coaches, just like collect as much social proof as you possibly can.
Yep. I actually have a little thing I keep on a post-it note on the corner of my computer, and it was from an expert kind of talking about how when you're pitching or presenting yourself online, your prospect is kind of scanning for these 3 things. So they're scanning for, are you like me? Can you lead me? Is there a really specific path that I can follow where you'll get me the result that I want? And again, nothing on that list says credentials. Credentials really matter. It's just, do I see a similarity? Like,
Right.
are you like me? Have you been in my shoes? Can you lead me? Do I believe you can take me down the path? And do I feel confident enough that you know what you're doing, that you've got a system or a plan you can
Hmm.
work me through to get to where I want to go? And that's really all people care about.
Yeah. I could probably count on one hand the number of times someone has even asked me, like, hey,
Yeah.
where'd you get a certification from? Oh, okay. Yeah. Here.
Yep.
Like, it just doesn't happen.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. I think it's really interesting. So there was one comment in, and I'll check YouTube here too, but Genevieve was asking, I think this is about the community. What ways are they engaging that you are noticing? Is it more individual messages or calls? So from a community standpoint, um, I did Nick Comodino is on the next season of the Coach Catalyst podcast, and he has some really interesting frameworks around communities. And he was talking about communities in a really unique way. Most of us think about communities as like, people are maybe posting their wins or things like that, right? Which is good, and I think there's some value to that. But he actually talked about like having a channel in your community that's just dedicated to like randomness. And he gave the
Mm,
example of like mom memes. So if you serve a mom population, right, mom memes are like a really big thing in that community that people just love kind of posting these memes. And humor is actually one of the best ways to kind of bring our guards down and start participating. And then once you get someone to participate a few times, now the space becomes safe for me
mhm.
to maybe talk about other things that are slightly more vulnerable. And so when I'm thinking about communities now, I'm thinking about it more about how do we make this like fun and engaging that's specific to the people that I'm serving, and not so much just like, hey, post your this or post your that. It's more about like, how do we make this an actual enjoyable place to come and check some things out? And humor, I think, can be a really easy way to do that.
You know what's actually really subtle about that example too is for the person that I always think about the person that's like shy to public speak, to raise their hand in the classroom. It's really passive to just like or put a ha ha or a
Hmm.
heart to a meme, but you still participated. And
Correct.
that's a really low barrier way to get the quieter people in your community to participate, where maybe they don't feel comfortable to share a win, or they're like, I don't have a win to share yet. So that's actually really clever.
Yeah, it was, and just this may have not been communities, but so Genevieve, if you're talking about engaging with people that's like your clients, like it's just a matter of like how you would engage with anybody. Just because something turns into like a virtual setting, right? So here's one thing I talk about a lot and that we take for granted in the offline world, right? If I'm meeting with someone in the offline world, let's say I'm a coach and a client's coming to the gym 3 days a week, that is like 150 touch points that I get with that person over the course of a year, right? And we know with relationships, it's a volume thing. It just takes repetition over time in order for relationships to build. And so early on with new clients, we need more touch points because that relationship is new and we need to start building a foundation. Right. Just like it's friends. If you've had a friendship maybe all through high school or maybe since you were little and then you kind of went your separate ways when everyone went to university and you come back 20 years later, it feels like you could just right where you left off, right? Like you feel like you've known that person forever because you put in that time up front. I think what a lot of coaches do early on is they don't have enough of those touch points early on, which doesn't build the foundation. And then we wonder why we maybe can't get a response from that person after 90 days. It's like, well, you've talked to them 3 times in that entire period. And this, we talk about this a lot too. And I know you did something else too, just the onboarding process, like having an incredible onboarding process can really build the foundation around a human relationship that allows you to gain the trust to engage with that person, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, 12 months from now, that kind of thing. So, I mean, Jen, you just did some stuff on this. So just, I mean, give me one or two things with what you're thinking about from an onboarding
Well,
standpoint.
my biggest change I've made is I try to send a personalized video message to every new inquiry that reaches out to my business. And for you coaches that love that idea, I just use Loom. So I
Yep.
started with the
Great.
free starter account, then I bumped it up to like the paid account. And what you can do is keep your head as like a little circle in the bottom of the corner. And then I have the real email message open so they can see it's not generic and pre recorded to everyone. I'm talking to them. And our close and conversion rates went way, way up. And then the next thing I do is I really quickly communicate like expectations of like what's happening next. So when they confirm, okay, here's your new client paperwork, here's our parking situation, here's where to go on your first appointment. And I reach that out multiple times because you think you'll send it once and people are going to remember and see. But I don't. I send it even like up to the day before. And that way, when they're, like a little kid starting at a new school, that's when the nerves are the highest. So all of that really reduces buyer remorse. And they're like, oh, they got me. Wow, look how professional, look how organized they are. So, yes, two big things is I send video messages and then I over explain and over communicate what's happening next to reduce their fear and uncertainty.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, we're seeing video. I mean, at Coach Catalyst, we have a lot of online only coaches,
Mhm.
right? And we're seeing the coaches that have the most success are the ones that are embracing and utilizing video, because video is also a scalable thing. Like if I
Mhm.
teach you something and you're watching me teach you it, it's much different than you reading an article that I wrote. Could be the exact same information, right? But you seeing my mannerisms, you kind of seeing my quirks starts to build that foundation of a relationship. And then if we close the circle with actual like live engagement and me learning about you as well, now we're starting to build like a really strong foundation,
Mhm.
that we can coach upon. Because like in the coaching world, if you don't have the trust of someone, like it's going to be pretty hard to get much of anything from them, because like that's just the foundation on what coaching is built on. So cool. Anything else that you want to just kind of throw out there? I'm excited to see where this goes. Like I think
Yeah, I
anything
think I
that's
think
done
we're
at
just in
scale is
early
cool.
days. Like I think that we just need to wait and see what else comes down the pipeline. If anything, this might be another spike in our general public about the awareness of the
Hmm.
importance of nutrition, the importance of nutrition coaching. So I'm not out here to like bash Metfix or anything like that. I hope they're going to be just another wave, just like CrossFit was that early
Right.
wave for getting people to lift weights and feel comfortable in a gym and build community. So I think a lot of good could come from this, but we have to wait and see, what specifically is going to happen inside that certification. And the only little inkling of a concern that I have is I hope it doesn't create any form of disordered eating
Right.
if it is that rigid, dogmatic carbs are bad, because as a dietitian and as a sports performance coach, that's not always the right answer depending on the person or the athlete.
Right. Well, we shall see. To be continued, I guess. So,
Yeah.
Jen, thanks so much for coming on. It's always awesome talking to you, and I appreciate the insight that you shared.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, guys.
See you guys later. All right.